Hey, Mark here. I just want to give you a quick heads up. Chris Kelly, the guest on this week's episode, you've heard him before. He's been on this show for over 2 years. He has a new podcast called Classic American Movies. And in one of his episodes, he interviewed one half of the directors of Out Cold. He interviewed Emmett Malloy. So, Chris Kelly, what did you learn?
I learned that the original version of Out Cold was supposed to be a lot more vulgar, and it was supposed to have more to it. A lot of the different guests that are in the movie were personal friends of the Malloy brothers. So there's a lot of more facts to the film than what you can get by just listening to the commentary or looking at the DVD or Blu-ray. But if you are interested in checking out that interview, you can find it anywhere that you stream your podcast, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, Podbean, anywhere that you are looking for your podcast. Just check out Classic American Movies and it'll pop up.
It's a good interview, guys. You want to listen to it. So enjoy the episode and make sure to go to Classic American Movies. Welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who is currently wearing a $300 hat. It's Chris Kelly.
I got it on sale. It was originally $600.
I gotta say, in this movie, I really enjoy Lee Majors in this role. I mean, he is the most stereotypical human being known to man, but when he goes, "That's a $300 hat, bitch," He does it. He does a good job. And actually, whenever I see him now, I think about this movie he was in called The Vikings, where he plays a Viking with a mustache. And they filmed it in Florida because he wanted to be close to Miami. And there's palm trees in a Viking movie. So whenever I think about that, I just think about Lee Majors' mustache in a Viking movie. It makes me laugh. But Chris, this movie, dude, is Casablanca.
It is. This movie is heavily based on the classic Casablanca movie,
which is insane.
And then you have a lot of the same dialogue, and you have the woman who's coming to visit the main character, and after being loved and lost. And I love the flashback where they're playing the great Weezer song,
Island in the Sun.
Island in the Sun, where they made a huge comeback that year with the Green album. I think the first hit was Hash Pipe, if I'm not mistaken. But they made a big comeback because their other album that had come out before that was the self-titled one with was it the Undone Sweater song?
No, that was like 94. So they had I think. Did they release Pinkerton after or before the Blue Album?
That is a great question. I think that was before, wasn't it?
Hey, look it up, Chris Kelly.
Oh, I'm hot on it.
hot on it. But yeah, so this movie, there's entire scenes when Anna, her character, comes in and she starts talking to Zach Galifianakis, who just plays Luke, but I'm going to call him Zach Galifianakis. They meet at a jukebox and she wants him to play the song. But he doesn't want to play the song, and it just reminds you of the scene from Casablanca. Play it, Sam, and dum dum da da da. When she does the beat, and then they both play the song. They start singing. Then the heroes come out and complain about the song, and at the end he puts her on the plane and she flies away. And they'll always have Pedro O'Hornies. And it's just, it's like you're watching this movie where a guy poops into a cup for a drug test, and Zach Galifianakis gets his little Galifianakis stuck in a jacuzzi jet. I mean, this is such a movie of the time. Like 99, you had American Pie hit, and then there's Road Trip, and there's this, and then there's the other movies that like a Euro Trip, Grind, those kind of films. This is such a movie of the moment, and I actually really love the soundtrack, dude. Sum 41, Blink, E6, like I think tons of Jack Johnson.
This movie definitely is a reflection of the time. I mean, in 2001, Jackass was a gigantic hit. So there was a lot of these extreme sports movies and guys doing these ridiculous things and pranks on one another that were becoming big hits. And they had a lot of alternative rock to them because that's just kind of the soundtrack of the time. To bring it back to Weezer, the Blue Album actually came out in 1994. Pinkerton came out in 1996.
Got it. So I remember the Blue Album, because I mean 94 was I had that CD, and then Pinkerton I loved, but no one really loved it. as much as the Blue album.
I think that one was kind of pushed to the side because everybody really liked the Undone Sweater song, and then
Buddy Holly.
Buddy
Spike
Holly,
Jones, dude, did that video.
Oh yeah, that was a great video too. I loved it because that was kind of the first time you ever saw in a music video, really, where you saw a combination of something from the past and then present being mashed up and looking fairly well.
And the fawns dancing around.
Yeah. What was he say? How was the salmon or something?
Wait, in where?
In the music video.
Oh, I don't remember that. I'm sorry.
At the end of it, he's like, how did you like the sandwiches or something? He's like, not so good, Al. He's like, man, not so good, Al.
You know, I was in a cover band called Johnny Party and the Furious Funksters, and we would do 90s covers. And we did Say It Ain't So. And so it's a pretty easy song to sing. I was the lead singer. Pretty easy to sing. Somebody, honey. Very easy. But there's one part like father, stepfather, your son. And I could never hit that line, so I'll just put the mic out to the crowd and let them sing it. Because I could never hit that line. That was my gimmick, man, where I couldn't hit high notes, low notes, middle notes, sideways. I couldn't hit any notes. I couldn't hit
I was a singer, but
I couldn't hit a banknote if it was in my hand. So I would just put them, but we were a 1:40 a.m. band, and that means we would go on at 1:40 a.m., play for 30 minutes, go past the 2 a.m. mark, and then, everyone by that time is so drunk, and they know all the songs anyway, so it doesn't matter how you sound. I could be, spoken word Nirvana, and people would go crazy at 1:40 a.m. Yeah. So, Say It Ain't So we picked because I couldn't sing it too well. But, dude, Island in the Sun, when you listen to Island in the Sun, do you think of Out Cold?
Actually, I do.
Yeah.
I've always done that because I think that song was used to promote the movie. And I bought the Green Album when it first came out. I was in the 11th grade, and I loved it. But then I remember that song was used to promote this movie, and then I immediately just connected the two, and I still do that to this day.
Oh, for sure. And you know what's interesting? I kind of have a weird bond with this movie because I was working in a movie theater in 2001, and after September 11th, the following months, up until maybe Lord of the Rings came up in December, but in September, October, November, it was really quiet in the cinemas. And Out Cold came out in this time. 8% Rotten Tomato meter score, 6.3 IMDb, which is actually pretty good.
84% with the audience.
Yeah. That's a good score. Like, the audiences like this movie. It's 90 minutes and it's out. But no one went to it. And during those days, we had to kind of really scale back on staff. But since I was, seniority there, I was a supervisor, I got all the shifts. But I could use one trash can all day in all 8 theaters, all 3 showings, because we scale back times, and I'd be half full because just no one was going to the movies. So I was just so bored, I would kick open the doors and just watch Out Cold. But it was in our theater for 2 weeks, so I'll just kind of kick open the doors and watch it. And then if someone's wandered in the theater, I'd tear their ticket and just go back watching it. And it's a fun little movie. All right, so this movie has all the trappings, Chris Kelly, of a 2001 film. But I think there's enough good bits. So I think when they spin the car and they start freaking out like Galifianakis, that's a great scene, is it not?
That's one of my personal favorites. I watched this recently with my brother, and he could not stop laughing during that scene because this is fantastic. They're spinning him around. A drunk Zach Galifianakis is brought out of the bar. They put him into his car, and that's one of their pranks that they pull on him as they spin the car around, and then they're like, 1, 2, 3, and they all scream. Zach Galifianakis wakes up from his drunken state, and he's like, ah!
Spinning the wheel like a maniac. Just, it's funny. So Megan was watching this in the background, and she was like, Zach's being normal in this movie. I don't think she was used to, because he's talking like a regular guy. Remember in Hangover, how much of a caricature he is, and kind of other. In this movie, he's just a skier. And I love his relationship with Pigpen, his brother. They fight all the time.
Do you really believe that they are brothers? This was Zach Galifianakis' first supporting role. Yep. And I like how he brought a lot of improv to it, but I also like that he's just kind of playing a regular guy, that he's not portraying himself as being like he's a guru or something about him. It's just he's just kind of a guy, which is great.
There's a scene in the movie where, when they're driving, and the guy has a Dodge Charger with an ice, he shovels, pushes ice with his Dodge Charger, which is insane. But there's a scene where Zach Galifianakis is like, man, you're like don't be a no-ball wussy, like very O1 speech. But in the commentary, the two directors, Brandon Malloy and Emmett Malloy, they said that Zach never learned his lines. So in that scene, if you watch, you'll see him holding paper, and that's his script. He did not want to learn lines in that movie. And they say that in the scene, in the commentary, they said in the scene that he has with Victoria Silvstedt, that he was just walking around the robe all day with like a swagger. They were like, he was a different Zach. It was really odd. But there's a couple things I want to run by you with this film. I mean, $25 million budget. It was produced by Lauren Schuler, Donner. I mean, huge names that produced it.
Yeah. She started off with Mr. Mom.
It's just nuts that there was these people behind it. But the one thing I do think that's helped this movie at least age as far as the looks go, I mean, they filmed this on location. This is a movie that, you know, everything's basically in camera. The skiing, the resort. I mean, this movie looks good. And I think that's, like, they filmed it when it was freezing. If you watch, there are times when it's just blaring down snow on them, or it's raining on them. And, like, the directors were very kind of honest about that. And they made a joke where at the end, they were like, well, we're filming it during sun, but what if it gets cloud covered? And all the people that were working on it were like, guys, this is like a stupid sex comedy. Like, get over yourself. No one's going to care if one scene is cloudy and one scene is sunny. But yeah, I mean, they filmed this in Canada. I thought the mountain worked really well. I don't know if you felt that about it.
I felt like I was watching one of those skiboarding videos that I used to watch back in the late 90s and early 2000s. I thought it was great. I loved how they used authentic skiing and snowboarding for the movie, that they actually had real stunt folks for it. I thought it was great. It really worked with it as opposed to using stock footage. I loved how at the end they show all the bloopers and it's like, oh.
Some wipeouts.
Oh man, it's like, can you imagine, when they have the helicopter and they take them the one guy all the way up to the top of the mountain, have him drop out, and then it's like he flubs it on the first hit. It's like, oh.
The guys kept falling. They did that over and over, and the guys just kept falling. They were like, it was the craziest thing we've ever done. They just kept wiping out.
Oh gosh.
And you know that King of the Mountain in the beginning? They went up there 2 weeks ahead of time with some major skiers and some big-time snowboarders, skiboarding. They built that course over the course of 2 weeks. And then they filmed it over several nights, and then they said all the professional snowboarders were mad at them because they didn't realize how terrible filming is.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
We're going to do this for 7 hours? Are you kidding me?
They built it. Like, they actually went out and built that race thing, which I think is pretty neat.
Dang.
You know,
especially having that house in the middle of it. Oof.
And then like AJ Cook, she's in that movie as Jenny. When she had when she was what do you call it? When she was being cast in the movie, they're like, "Can you snowboard?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm great at it." And then she showed up and couldn't snowboard. It's all right. So Chris, this movie, Out Cold. If we looked at it, there's a couple ways to look at it, like objectively and subjectively. Now, this is not an original or classic of any type of genre. I mean, it's Casablanca with some Animal House with a few gags tossed in there. But
it's every classic wrapped into one.
For what it is, though, do you think it's an 8% movie? If you looked at this as originally shot as an R-rated, then went to a PG-13 rated ski-boarding, like sex comedy that has a lot of, of the time music, is this an 8% or is this something more?
No, I don't think this is an 8% at all. I think this is, it's not, you know what you're getting for. You know what you're walking into. The front cover is not exactly painting an artistic film. I mean, you have the entire crew on a snowboard. I believe the original front cover was them flying off a cliff.
Where are they going?
Yeah, if you're watching this movie, if you go into this movie going, I really hope that this is a romantic drama or this is going to be an in-depth film about snowboarding, come on. You know right off the bat that you're walking into a comedy. You know that it's going to have a lot of boozing probably. One of the first thing you're smacked with when you look at the front cover, it says Animal House on Ice.
Yeah. Is that even a compliment?
Yes, the heck yes, that's a compliment. So to anybody who's giving this a negative review, what are you expecting? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's what I always pose the question when people watch films and they go, oh, that was that was not what it was. Well, what were you really expecting walking into this film? I mean, come on. It's filled with a bunch of people from comedies. Zach Galifianakis in his infancy